Newsflash. I've just heard today, whilst I was putting together the episode, that the councillors have awarded themselves a 22% pay increase. Many councillors are saying, oh, it's not our fault. It was decided by a committee elsewhere and we just had to vote it through because we didn't want to vote against it in case any councillors really needed the pay increase. Okay, I get that, but tone deaf is really the phrase that comes to mind, I think. 22% pay increase. The council tax just went up today as well. That went up to 9.9%. Thank goodness it didn't go up to 10% or we wouldn't be able to afford it. 9.9% it's gone up to today. And as a B&B owner in a domestic property, I pay my council tax. I'm also looking forward, apparently, to pay the visitor levy. And this will ultimately it's supposed to be passed on to guests. It's guests who are supposed to pay it, really. But the way the legislation is and everything else, it's not actually charged to the guests. The guests aren't actually liable to pay it, but it's part of the bill, so they've got to pay it, if that makes sense. So the businesses have got a choice to either absorb all or part of the visitor levy to remain competitive, because it will hurt competitiveness. And I don't know, that's going to work out around about £300 a month for me, thereabouts. And the council tax rise. I mean, it's just daylight robbery at the end of the day. It's daylight robbery. But I will leave you with a happy, rosy fact that at least the chief executive of Argyll and Bute is paid the same as the Prime Minister, if not a bit more. Oh, God, you couldn't make it up, could you? You couldn't make it up. One day I'll get the hang of actually recording an episode and clicking the right buttons. I don't think today is going to be the day. This is take 3. Oh, terrible, isn't it? I think I need a coffee, actually. Welcome to the show. My name is John Richardson, and this is Richardson's Rubicon podcast. So I'm going to prattle on a bit about the visitor levy again, and I just want to share with you some bizarre behaviours, and I'm wondering if you could actually help explain it for me. So my concern is that we're sleepwalking into the visitor levy because of the nature of it, the rollout. The nature of the rollout is such that it's been touted in the press as a tourist tax, so people don't seem to think that they're going to be affected by it. And it's almost like everyone else pays a tourist tax, why shouldn't we? It's no bother to me at all. Blah, 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 blah. What's your issue? All of that sort of stuff. And it's not tourist tax, it's an accommodation tax. Everybody pays this tax whenever they stay in accommodation, for whatever reason. There are no exemptions. And it's quite a big tax as well. It's not like your €1 or €2 that you pay when you go on holiday in a lovely destination, which often seeks to crowd control and reduce the number of tourists, like Venice, for example. And it just seems to me a little bit blinkered. Yeah, it's like, why are you not up in arms about this? If you need to go for a job interview in a different part of the country, you're going to have to pay accommodation tax, this visitor levy. Why are you happy about that? What's going on? So anyway, I made a comment by the Scottish Government, as the SNP actually. And I suppose, really, thinking about it, it's obvious that I'm going to get the reaction that I got because it's SNP. And people these days are quite partisan, aren't they? Let's face it. And I've already said in the previous episode, I used to be a member of the SNP, but you've got to understand if someone's doing something wrong, you've got to call it out, really, haven't you? You've got to call it out. First Minister John Swinney will give a press conference at Bute House following the passing of the budget bill, right? Okay, fair enough. So I said, will he mention the stealth tax rolling out across Scotland to give them even more money, to councils? Provided a link to the campaign website. I got a laugh emoticon from that. And then Kenny basically responded and said most countries in the world have a tourist tax. It never stopped anyone going nowhere. I'm sure it didn't stop anyone going nowhere at all, but did it stop anyone going anywhere? Question. Being as that's what the purpose of it is. It's to reduce the visitor numbers, isn't it, in most places? So I said, anyway, you might want to see how different this is to a normal tax, Kenny. Then you may have a different opinion. Do you really think anyone would really object to a traditional tourist tax? Some people might. They have exemptions for elderly, sick, children, tradespeople, hospital visitors, locals, their own citizens. I could go on. In fact, they have flat rates, a few euros a night. Often it's seasonal too. Not this visitor levy. Everyone pays all the time, and it's a percentage rate controlled by the councils. A percentage rate takes more money than a flat rate. In fact, Scotland will become the most expensive place in Europe, down to that tax and the 20% VAT not paid anywhere else. A huge difference. Thank you for your comment, and another link to the website. I just got a laugh and a like for that. But that just goes to show the misunderstanding, if you like, of this. People seem to think it's a tourist tax. Honestly, wake up. It's not a tourist tax. Then my favourite response was from Nadia. John Richardson, hardly a stealth tax. It's money to clear up behind our tourists, and keep the facilities tourists use in good condition. Nice facilities attracts more people, which brings in more tourists. This is dull. And let's be honest, if you use it, you pay for it isn't exactly unreasonable. Okay. So, that's the same old trope that gets rattled around all the time. Clear up behind tourists, not a tourist tax. Nice facilities attracts more people, which brings in more tourists. Yes, you've got to wonder why we haven't got any in a lot of places. I actually wonder what Visit Scotland do. Yeah, let's have a bit think about that. What do they do? Do they lobby to have better facilities in different places? They've shut all their information centres, haven't they? They've only got a few left open, and they've shifted everything over to websites. It's not very good. Really? Bit rubbish. And they saved a fortune doing that, so what are they doing with that money? It's all a bit half-cocked, if you ask me. But anyway, I basically responded to Nadia, if that is her real name, because it looks like a dodgy profile in all fairness. It's not just tourists. It's everyone in Scotland that needs to stay over in a legitimate accommodation for any reason. So I'm repeating the point that it's just not for tourists. Like people have been doing for centuries without a visitor levy, which we have. We've managed quite well without a visitor levy, and what's going on? I know what's going on. They just want to give more money to the council. They want to give them their own revenue stream. They want to give them control of that revenue stream so they can pull the levers on the percentage rate whenever they want. And the Scottish Government will use that as an argument to give the councils less money. It's obvious to me when I've got the brain the size of a gnat. If that's not obvious to a lot of other people, then come on, wake up. So I also ask, why are the councils not challenged over wasteful spend? I rarely see any challenge over that. Have you seen any challenge over that? I see a lot of whinging in papers and stuff, but we don't see any actual challenge in the actual results of that challenge. And it seems to be a never-ending, gaping maw that the councils have to have more funding. Just never-ending, isn't it, really? Never-ending. So I basically say, why are executives rewarded for failure? Because they're getting huge pay rises. And yet we see this request for more money, the complaint about failing services all the time. And I'm not talking again about council workers, I'm talking about executives. And then I said, and if the money was ring-fenced, perhaps I'd see your apparent perspective. It looks to us, I made a spelling error, that the councils are just using this to fill gaps caused by excessive pay rises, 17%, in many councils much more, and that's fact. I'm afraid you need to look into this further, Nadia. if this is indeed a real profile, as you clearly do not understand the issues as are briefly outlined here. And I explore in much more detail on the link site. Thank you for your comment. I do hope you educate yourself further. Got a bit of a laugh for that one. Nadia, she responded, and I think it was 20 minutes later, so she's thought about this. John Richardson, and everyone in Scotland uses those facilities, so they should pay. Like it or not, people create waste, use the roads, etc., so ring fencing isn't a practical option. I'm afraid it's required by legislation. So whether it's a practical option or not, it needs to be ring fenced. Simple as that. Now, in the way the legislation has been written, it allows so much wiggle room. And you could turn around and say, for instance, we'll ring fence this to spend money on, public toilets. And then they'll just shift the budget around somewhere else and the money will siphon off to somewhere else. It's just pathetic. Anyway, and yes, I'm only too aware of the issues of having to travel for healthcare. For example, I have to do it myself, and I think there should be facilities for that at hospitals that serve remote communities at a minimal cost. But if you're travelling for work, then your employer pays, not you. Oh, that's okay then. If you're self-employed travelling to work, then you build it in the cost of doing business like any other cost. Yeah, so it's okay then to increase costs by 5% in these cases and then obviously pass it on to the consumer. And if you have to pay it yourself, Nadia, you're happy to vote for an extra tax of 5%. Go you, girl. As for excessive wage rises, you are misinformed. Actually, I'm not. It's a matter of public record. There you go. So I really respond back to her and say, spoken like a council representative, we already pay many taxes that are supposed to cover these expenditures you mention, which is true. You're attempting to justify a 5% rise, which will contribute to inflation, another thing that's not been thought of. And aside from that, if businesses that use accommodation have to pay it, the cost will be passed to the consumer. You're happy about price rises, are you? That's a bit weird. And being misinformed about excessive pay rises is a matter of public record. Sorry, I did actually say that earlier. And I suggest councils get their houses in order first. Thanks for your input. Be quite droll. So I think that really just shows that people do have this whole... They're not informed enough, I think, about the visitor levy. They're not informed that it's not just a tourist tax. They're not informed of the differences between the visitor levy and the tourist tax. And they're not informed about the council budgets and what they're supposed to be spent on. I think that's quite a valid thing to look at as well. Because quite rightly, I think a lot of people are concerned that services are failing, and they just think services are failing, need more money, let's get it from there. So I can understand what people are saying. It's misdirected and misguided. And I think a root and branch review of what services are statutory and what services are not statutory should be performed by the Scottish Government. If that is performed by the Scottish Government, then that will restructure the local councils' budgets. And then we can see really what the councils need to be doing on a statutory basis and what the add-ons are that they can cut should they be required to cut them. And I think that's only fair. Don't you? Anyway, thanks very much for listening to this episode. Oh, what the fuck? Nadia's just made another response. Hold on. Oh, come on. Lol, no, I'm absolutely not council rep. What I am is a realist who knows the cost of cleaning up behind others. Yes, pay rises are a matter of public record, but ensuring staff have a reasonable wage in comparison to others is not excessive. She's missed the point. I'm talking about, and this is what I mean about low information. They're selectively reading what I'm saying. I'll respond to her and I'll basically say it's about the executives. I mean, you don't have to have someone being paid £150,000 a year to a huge amount of money. Huge amount of money. Obscene, I would say. Some are paid much, much more than that. But I'll answer that later. Anyway, thanks for watching and listening to the show. If you do want to get on and actually talk about your perspective on any of this, then please do let me know. All right, cheers, bye. richardsonsrubicon.com, bye.